money if the GM wanted to fire him. At the end of the year, my guess is it won't happen because he's going to want a fresh slate with the new GM saying, all right, I either want to keep Bruce or not. Craig Leopold doesn't like any owner, like dead money. And that's the thing. And that was one of the big things I will say, to Paul Fenton's credit. We could talk about how dysfunctional the organization was and the front office was this year. But one thing that happened last year is that Chuck Fletcher gave extensions to everybody in the organization to take care of them, to keep them safe and secure. They had young families and things like that. It was a classy thing for him to do, not the greatest thing for the organization, because then Craig Leopold doesn't want to let Paul Fenton clean house, because then he owes all these people a bunch of money and he's got to hire all these new people. And so now Paul Fenton was basically forced to inherit this staff in a league where everybody wants loyalty and trust and things like that. And Paul, by nature, is just not a very trustful person. So it just really screwed up right there. It created almost an instant recipe for major dysfunction and problems in the front office, because Paul was forced to keep these people, and he doesn't like to trust people. To be blunt. So, one thing here is like from a new GM's perspective, to now all of a sudden give Bruce Boudreau this extension without consulting him, I think is almost creating the same potential problem if you're not willing to eat the money if the GM wants to get rid of him in a year.
Obviously, Craig Leopold is a very wealthy man, but he's not like a billionaire. Is he? Does he have the wherewithal to do what he wants to do, or does he have to be very careful with his money?
I mean, I don't want to say stuff that's beyond my professionalism, but he's got plenty of money.
Okay.
I mean, again, I don't think I'm saying anything that's just classless, but I mean, he's half of a bigger wealth, if that makes sense. I mean,
I understand.
His wife is great-granddaughter
right.
of S.C. Johnson. I mean, she's president and CEO of Johnson Outdoors and a lot of subsidiaries of S.C. Johnson. I think that, as long as, like most marriages, they're pulling their money, I think that he's fine. I mean, he spent $1.5 billion on this team. And then you add the buyouts, probably $2 billion. The amount of guys that this team has to buy out every year.
We got about 15 minutes left. If you have any live questions, just come on up. We'd love to talk to you. From Kyle on Twitter, who do you think will be more competitive this year, Minnesota or Iowa?
Oh man, this podcast is taking a turn for the worse, and I'm not even the ringleader. Like usually, I'm the one that's.
Well, let me rephrase, Counselor. How do you think Iowa will be this year?
I mean, I don't know. I remember 2 years ago, I thought they were going to be unbelievable with the amount of guys that they down there, and they weren't. Last year, they obviously had a decent year until things got really sketchy there in the second half, but they wound up making the playoffs and going into the second round of the playoffs. This year, it's going to be really. I think it's going to be a fascinating team. Watching I don't have the list in front of me, but the Dewars and the Duheims and the Ladnias and all these guys turn pro. A couple other guys as well. I do think Gordeev, the kid that they traded for from Toronto. There's going to be a good half dozen guys that go down there. Obviously, Matt Robson is another one. I think that's a good thing that now suddenly they're get the influx of their own young talent, and hopefully one of these guys could surprise the Wild. I could tell you, I mean, talking to a lot of the GM candidates here the last couple of weeks, I mean, more than a dozen GM candidates I've talked to. The one thing that they all say is they go look at the Wild depth chart, and there's just not a ton coming beyond Kaprizov, who's still technically a figment of all of our imaginations. But if all of a sudden, you get Ladnia, and if Kovanov has another big year in the queue for Moncton, I was talking to Torchetti on the phone yesterday, and he's going on and on about how good he thinks Kovanov can be. But if all of a sudden, like Duheim suddenly breaks out this year, or Dewar or Ladnia has a great year down in Iowa, now all of a sudden next year we're talking like, all right, maybe this team actually has some pretty decent young players in the organization. We just don't know yet. So,
Bert, how you doing?
All right. How are you guys?
Great. How are you?
Good. I'm gonna save you here. Well, actually, I'm not. I was looking at the Wild schedule.
Don't be too positive. I saw you last year on the FSN pre-show. And
wow. I'm never going to live that down.
That chit-chat that you're having with Gorg.
Well, I had to look down on him. I mean, I was blinded by the spot from his head.
Oh, man.
Wow. So,
did Gorgie talk with his hands the entire time he was talking to you?
Well, no.
He does this a lot.
But they put me on a platform. That was the thing. And he's standing down, so I'm really looking down at him, So I'm like, couldn't figure that one out. And then I had to talk to Fenton, and then it set the whole night off. So. So I'm actually talking about Iowa. I was looking at the Iowa schedule, son. I'm actually looking forward more to going to Des Moines than I am to the X. So
really?
Yeah. So.
Why?
Well, just the young players. And,
I see their roster.
Excitement, yeah. So we'll see. So,
how funny it'll be next April when we're all here getting ready for
playoff run,
President's Trophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just getting our line in for the parade. So you said Hextall came in with his interview with a detailed plan. Did the other interviewees come in with detailed plans, and if so, do you know what they were?
I've heard things. A lot of this stuff is hearsay. You hear so much stuff through the grapevine. The one thing I have heard just from people that know all these guys is that there's some people there's one candidate that's going in there and saying, I don't have to bring it up, and not only that, I'll get you a cup in this amount of time. I think Hex is one guy I'm being told has basically said, I will have to tear it down, but I will get you back up there in 4 years. And I think other guys are the same way. The one guy that I could just see having an unbelievable presentation is Brian Lawton. He's that type of mind, and that's why it could be a game changer if he gets in front of him. The one thing that's interesting and I haven't talked to Craig Leopold or Matt Bacon about this stuff, but if I was giving advice, the one thing I would say is if you're really concerned, if you're just not going to hire Fitzgerald or Guerin because you think, all right, we screwed up on Fenton, we can't hire another first-time GM, what you should do is try to ascertain with them, all right, right now, if we let you bring in a right-hand man, who would that be? Or could we maybe suggest a right-hand man? Could you, there are tag teams always in the NHL. You see Chuck Fletcher and Brent Flair. You see, lately it's been Don Waddell and Rick Dudley. Everybody kind of has that type of guy. And so maybe you could say to Tom or Pilly, hey, do you mind if we have a number two that has NHL experience, that is maybe a former GM like a Lawton or a Gillis or whoever. I'm just saying. And this way, maybe you're getting the best of both worlds. So you're satisfying some of your own, or you're kind of remedying some of your own nerves, and maybe giving the job to a first-year assistant GM if you're willing to have somebody with maybe a little more experience, a little more contract negotiation skills, a little more CBA expertise, something as a number two, and maybe you can kind of work that out. So that's one thing that I would say. But in terms of hearing the plans, I have a good idea, but I wouldn't say that I've sat down and been presented the plans that Craig Leopold, Matt Make, and Mike Modano are this week and next week. Yeah.
So, and when your mom comes to visit next time, is she bringing the new dog to run through the house?
I don't know. Last time I stayed at a hotel, I would have to probably definitely do that again.
You might not know what you walk back into in the house, though, with the dog.
The dolls and the Tremerts have plenty of room. I've been reading on social media that the Tremerts are now empty nesters. So that definitely, as far as I could tell, 3 bedrooms there. Take one for the mom and one for each dog.
We could share it too, because Julie invited her to stay over too, and she was looking forward to that too.
So beautiful. Philosophical question: would Leopold be the kind of guy who would be willing to hire an agent to run his team?
An agent meaning like a former,
somebody who's worked as an agent.
Yeah, that would be Mike Gillis and Bill Zito would be the only 2 that have out there right now or Lawton. Sorry. All right, 3.
Yeah.
I think he would. I think he absolutely
We've seen that happen in other sports. I don't know that it's happened in hockey.
They're the best. Yeah, no, it definitely has. Brian Burke used to be an agent.
That's true.
Mike Gillis used to be an agent. Brian Lawton used to be an agent. They were all GMs. There are many others as well. So, one of the, I think it's Solomon in L.A. He was a longtime agent. Obviously, Zito in Columbus. Tom Lynn, the Wild former assistant GM, is now an agent.
I forgot Tom was, too. You're right.
Tom's client actually was Jimmy Schultz, just signed with Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh. Yeah. We're coming down the home stretch. If you have live questions, get up here and get them. I want to say one more round of thank yous. Thank you to Tin Shed. Again, our next live show, August 29th at 7 p.m. Twill in the Edina Galleria, fixologyrepair.com. Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent who works the entire metro, and Bite Squad, bitesquad.com.
I was just going to look outside to see if I saw his car. But
we actually looked for his car on the way down here. and we did not find it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to start parking next to your car so I can guarantee mine is safe everywhere we go. So,
That's
what's
a
up,
form
Jason?
Of insurance. Hi, Jason.
I've told Jay. Oh, I shouldn't say your last name, but I grew up with somebody the same exact name as his. So for years, I don't know if you remember, but on Twitter, I'd be like, "Hey, you're not the guy that grew up in Boca Raton, right?"
So, I moved up here just for you.
Yeah.
So I know this is completely unprecedented and not something that they'd want to do, but is there a way Rask could start in the minor leagues if he doesn't work out?
Well, I mean, theoretically, Craig would have to pay him. There's always that chance. He definitely would clear waivers. You don't get a ton of cap relief. I mean, you would only get about $925 maybe of cap relief. The rest would be charged against your cap. But theoretically, yeah, he can go down there.
Is that something they'd entertain? I mean,
if all of a sudden, that's one where you would have to. That is one like Craig Leopold. The whole narrative that Craig Leopold, by the way, is this meddling owner that needs to approve every single decision is absolutely a fallacy. But I can tell you that if you're going to put a guy making $4 million in the minors, you probably should have a conversation with the owner because now you've you've tripled their payroll down there, and he's spending to the max up here. So there's certain budgets on every team. I mean, I don't care if you're a cap team or not. Every hockey ops department has a budget, not just for payroll, but what they pay on staff and things like that. And so Craig would have to be absolutely comfortable with that. The thing is, the interesting thing about Rask is that. He's not somebody that you just kind of if all of a sudden the Wild, say, wound up with two centers, we all might be laughing in December like, oh, my God, thank God they had Rask. Because if Rask could play in a top six role, there's a chance he might surprise us. The one thing, I was talking to I'm trying to think if I should give away who I was talking to the other day. I think it's fine that I say this. So, I was conversing with Waddell last week about Rask, and the one thing that he said to me is that and he had no reason to lie to me, but he said that if you look at the history of players that have missed an entire first half of the season, when they come back, it's like a lost year. The only one he brought to me is can you think of anybody that hasn't been that case? And the only one I could think of actually was Parisi. If you think about it, he missed half a season 2 years ago. He had a miserable first month and a half, but then all of a sudden, if you remember in March, he had the most goals in the NHL. I think he had 12 in the month of March. So he actually caught up, but he's he's a different animal. But even if you look those first month and a half, I think we all look like, oh my God, is this going to be him the rest of his career? His point is that you give Rask this offseason to come into shape, work all summer, not cut his finger off making sweet potatoes, things like that. And the other thing is, not only, by the way, we kind of almost joke that he had this kitchen accident that cost him the start of last season. But if you actually remember, we didn't really write a ton about it because he was on Carolina. But right after the season, that off season last year, he had, I think it was shoulder surgery. It's a major surgery. So he doesn't work out for most of the summer. Then he gets ramped up, and then he has this kitchen accident, misses the first half of the year. So I'm not trying to sit there and protect Victor Rask but I will say it's not his fault he was traded for Nino, right? I mean, we could all say that. I mean, everything I can see of Victor, he's not a bad human being at all. So there's a chance that he comes in here and has a great training camp, or all of a sudden we're in the month of November and the Wild have lost Mikko and Eriksson Ek, and they're like, oh my God, thank God they have Victor Rask. So I don't think that Rask is at that point where it's like we should just say he should be off this roster. I still think that I'd much rather have Nico Sturm down in Iowa playing 20 minutes a game and getting power play time than playing on the fourth line here. So I think that we're way premature, that it's become this narrative that Victor Rask is just absolutely useless. And let's see. I mean, he did have 20 goals in this league. So that's my rant on that.
Last quick question. Is any of the candidates a big Bruce Boudreau fan?
I will say I really haven't had those conversations. I think I'd be speaking out of school there.
Good question, though.
So yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
But regardless, every candidate, doesn't have a relationship with Bruce. I will say that. As far as I know, Ron Hextall hasn't. Obviously, Lawton hasn't, other than just knowing him. Fitzy hasn't. Guerin hasn't. Mellenby hasn't. Mark Hunter. Did I say Mark Hunter hasn't? So that's something else you